You know, it may have only been around for about 6 years now, but the DC Extended Universe already has a pretty extensive timeline spanning thousands and thousands of years. And the really fun part is that, unlike some of the other interconnected superhero franchises out there, looking at you X-Men, the DCEU actually has a relatively straightforward timeline, with the only issue being that it's split up between a few different movies, tie-in comics, books, all sorts of stuff. Not too bad, but it can get a little confusing. So while we wait for Warner Brothers to start cranking out some new entries in this universe, like Wonder Woman 1984, that Harley Quinn Birds of Prey movie, and Man of Steel 2, what? I can be hopeful. I thought it'd be fun trying to piece together everything we currently know about the DCEU timeline. Couple of things before I get into it though. Obviously there's going to be some massive spoilers in this video, so I'd click away if you haven't seen any of those movies yet, and I'm not going to go over every little detail, like I've cut out a lot of birthdays and stuff that doesn't happen on screen, just because I don't want to clog up this video with a bunch of stuff that nobody really cares about. That having been said though, like with the X-Men timeline I did a while back, if you do want to see a copy of my DCEU timeline, you can always download a copy over on my website via the link in the description. So with that out of the way, let's start exploring the DC Extended Universe timeline. Our first stop in this big crazy universe starts almost 20,000 years before the start of the Common Era with the Man of Steel prequel comic, which focuses on the origins of the scout ship buried in the Canadian Arctic. We see a class of Kryptonians, including Kara Zor-El, Dev-Em, and Kel-Ur, training to see which of them are going to be able to go out into space and participate in that period of Kryptonian exploration and colonization that hologram Jor-El mentioned in Man of Steel. Unfortunately for Kara and Kel though, Dev's kinda crazy and decides to start killing off the competition, starting with Kel before moving on to Kara. But he ends up getting stopped because he sucks at murder and gets handed over to the Kryptonian Council for judgment. With the danger behind her, Kara and her crew head out into the unknown and go to sleep, waiting for the ship to land on whatever planet they're traveling to. 10 years later, Kara wakes up, only to discover that Dev-Em actually snuck on board and killed her entire crew after 2 council members let him go to avoid the death penalty.
Surprise, motherfucker!
The two battle it out as the ship flies to Dev's new chosen location, with each getting stronger as they get closer to the sun. Kara ends up winning the battle, but because the ship was damaged during the fight, it crash lands in what is now Canada. After placing her dead crew in their pods, Kara wanders into the icy wilderness, never to be seen again. A few thousand years later, we see the birth of the witch that would later become the Enchantress, as well as the first invasion of Earth by Steppenwolf. Right after Steppenwolf took off with the Amazonian Mother Box in Justice League, Hippolyta gave the order to light the ancient warning signal, with one of the other Amazonians mentioning that the warning signal hasn't been used for 5,000 years.
We have to light the ancient warning fire.
The fire has not burned for 5,000 years.
Given how both the Queen and Diana seem to imply that the signal is used for a single purpose, this would mean that Steppenwolf originally invaded Earth 5,000 years before the start of Justice League, so around 2983 BC. Skipping up another few thousand years, in 1018, we see the fall of Atlantis and the self-imposed exile of King Atlan take place, as confirmed towards the end of Aquaman when Kraken Mary Poppins mentioned that she had been defending Atlan's trident from would-be claimers for 1,000 years.
And for 1,000 years, I have seen the greatest champions try and fail.
Not only would it make more sense to say that Atlan started his exile right after sinking Atlantis, but putting the sinking and exile around this time would also give Atlan plenty of time to find out about the founding of Rome, which supposedly took place about 750 years before the Common Era, and make part of his trident scavenger hunt about it. Works for me anyway. 100 years later, Ares, the god of war, loses his mind and starts killing the old gods before finally being taken down by Zeus, as mentioned in Wonder Woman. This also marks the year Diana, the Princess of the Amazons, is born. Now I know Zack Snyder mentioned in a 2016 interview with Empire that Diana was about 5,000 years old by the time Batman v Superman takes place, obviously meaning she couldn't have been born around this time, but if she actually was thousands of years old by the time she met Superman and Batman, then this would put her birth a few years before Steppenwolf's first invasion. Which obviously can't happen since the old gods would be dead before they could show up on screen. Therefore, it's more likely that Patty Jenkins, who claimed that Diana is 800 by the time Wonder Woman takes place, is actually correct in the age department. Plus, it fits better with that line we got in one of the Justice League trailers.
Long before I was born, he came as the spearhead of an alien invasion.
So there's that. Either way, Diana starts getting interested in combat training as she grows up, eventually getting approval from her mom to start intensely training by the time she's 12. We eventually see all that training pay off when Diana leaves the island with American pilot Steve Trevor in 1918, during the events of Wonder Woman. While on the road, Diana takes a picture we'll be seeing later, and eventually confronts Ares, who reveals that she's the child of Zeus and Hippolyta, allowing her to kill other old gods, which she later does. Decades later, in 1970, we see the birth of Bruce Wayne. There's not a whole lot in-universe confirming Bruce's exact age, but we can work this out thanks to some behind-the-scenes comments from both Batman v Superman producer Michael Uslan and director Zack Snyder. Uslan confirmed that Bruce is in his mid-40s by the events of that movie, with Snyder getting more specific on Vero in 2017. So with all that in mind, we can see that this makes his birth date sometime in 1970. A few years later sees the start of Shazam take place, with a young Thaddeus Sivana being brought to the Rock of Eternity by the wizard Shazam to see if he's worthy of becoming the wizard's champion. He fails after being tempted by the 7 deadly sins and is sent back to Earth, where he accidentally distracts his father, causing a car crash. A few years after that, Kal-El is born naturally to Jor-El and Lara Lorvan on Krypton. Clark mentions during a conversation with Dr. Emil Hamilton that he's 33 years old.
You can't expect us to not take precautions. You could be carrying some kind of alien pathogen.
Been here for 33 years, Doctor. Haven't infected anyone yet.
And we get a number of clues peppered throughout the movie, like Lois's camera, proving that the main events of Man of Steel take place in 2013. So after doing some simple math, we can see that Superman was born in 1980. This is also the same time Jor-El gets killed by General Zod, who gets sent to the Phantom Zone for attempting a coup, and Krypton finally blows up. Thankfully for baby Kal-El though, he managed to fly off just before the planet exploded, winding up in the care of Jonathan and Martha Kent in Smallville, Kansas, who give him the new name Clark Kent. The following year, as we saw in the beginning of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, Thomas and Martha Wayne are murdered by Joe Chill in front of an 11-year-old Bruce. Again, we don't have all that much to go off of, but we do see the movie Excalibur at the theater, which first premiered in 1981. The events of Wonder Woman 1984 take place, obviously, in 1984, and the year after, Queen Atlanta washes up on Amnesty Bay and is found by Thomas Curry, with their child Arthur being born the year afterwards in 1986. I know the Argus file at the end of Suicide Squad claimed that Arthur was actually born in 1979, but obviously that doesn't make any sense if his parents don't meet for a few years after that, so instead I'm going with 1986, as confirmed in the tie-in book Arthur's Guide to Atlantis. 3 years later, a number of Clark's powers manifest at school, including super hearing, X-ray vision, and heat vision, forcing Martha to help calm him down and start teaching him how to focus his powers and bring them under control. Meanwhile, several Atlantean soldiers arrive on Amnesty Bay searching for Queen Atlanta. Although she kills all of them, the Queen travels back to Atlantis to protect both Thomas and Arthur, promising to return when it's safe. 2 years after that is the birth of the Scarlet Speedster himself, Barry Allen. In 1993, the school bus containing Clark Kent and some of his schoolmates crashes into a local river, forcing Clark to save the bus and his passengers, revealing his powers in the process. In 1995, a 25-year-old Bruce Wayne becomes the vigilante Batman, as confirmed by Zack Snyder on Vero in 2017, and a young Arthur Curry manifests his control over sea life during a field trip to an aquarium in Massachusetts. A few years later, Jonathan Kent dies after getting stuck on the road while trying to save the family dog during a tornado and refusing Clark's help. Over the next couple years, we see Arthur start his Atlantean training under Volko, and the Reverse Flash travels back in time and murders Barry's mom, as confirmed by Alfred during Justice League.
Young Barry always protested his father's innocence, but he was 9 and nobody listened to him.
Skipping forward a bit to 2004, the future champion Billy Batson is born. Towards the end of that movie, Billy mentions to Sivana that he's
Basically 15.
which you would think would mean that he was actually born in 2003 since the movie takes place in 2018, more on this later, but as mentioned by Freddy during his angry rant after the bus save,
Billy, you're 14!
Therefore, we can safely put Billy's birthday as being somewhere in 2004. A year later, in 2005, Batman sees a death in the family as A. Robin is murdered at the hands of the Joker, as confirmed by Zack Snyder.
In my mind, it was that Robin had died about 10 years earlier.
A few years after that, we see 4-year-old Billy Batson get separated from his mom at a carnival. Moving up a few more years, and we see Dr. June Moon encountering the spirit of the Enchantress while on a 2010 archaeological expedition, as confirmed by her Argus file released during the movie's marketing spree. Then in 2013, we see the main events of Man of Steel play out, with Clark Kent officially becoming Superman and fighting against Zod and the other Kryptonian criminals who escape the Phantom Zone. Their final battle destroys a large portion of Metropolis, which also winds up pissing off Bruce Wayne, who wasn't able to save anybody in the Metropolis branch of Wayne Enterprises, but did arrive just in time to see Superman battling Zod in the sky. Superman ends up killing Zod to protect some random family, tells the military to piss off and leave him alone, then gets a job with the Daily Planet in order to be closer to the people he swore to protect. The following year, in 2014, gangster Monster T infuriates Joker at Joker's nightclub, causing the Clown Prince of Crime to kill him and go on the run with Harley Quinn, with Batman in hot pursuit. Despite the Dark Knight's best efforts, the Joker manages to escape, leaving Harley behind, who winds up getting captured by Batman and sent to prison. Towards the start of 2015, Superman is interviewed by some kids for a dumb podcast after saving some people, and a few months after that, we see the events of Batman v Superman play out, with Lex Luthor manipulating both Batman and Superman into fighting each other, only for that plan to blow up after Batman finds out their moms have the same first name.
Save Martha! Why did you say that name?
Of course, Lex has a backup plan in the form of Doomsday, forcing Superman, Batman, and the newly arrived Wonder Woman to team up and battle the monster. The battle finally ends after Superman, saying his goodbyes to Lois, fatally stabs Doomsday with Batman's kryptonite spear, while also being stabbed by Doomsday's bone protrusion. Luthor is arrested and is told by Batman he's being transferred to Arkham Asylum, and funerals are held for both Superman and Clark Kent. After the funeral, Batman and Wonder Woman decide to form a team of metahumans that can protect the world now that Superman is gone. A few months later, a tip from Amanda Waller leads Batman to capture Floyd Lawton in Gotham City while Lawton is out with his daughter. And in August the following year, according to Waller's phone, we see the events of Suicide Squad play out, with Enchantress freeing her brother Incubus in a plot to take over the world. This forces Waller to recruit a number of Belle Reve inmates, including Deadshot, Harley Quinn, El Diablo, Captain Boomerang, Killer Croc, and Slipknot, to extract a mysterious target from Midway City, who turns out to be Amanda Waller herself. Joker's also kinda involved, but only for like 5 minutes, and the Suicide Squad winds up killing both Enchantress and Incubus, freeing June Moon in the process. Sometime later, Joker breaks Harley out of prison, hopefully to put her in a much better movie. And sometime after that, we see Amanda Waller meeting with Bruce Wayne, who offers her protection in exchange for her files on several known metahumans. Another few months later, in early 2017, the events of Justice League start to take place. We know thanks to Bruce's meeting with Aquaman that Arthur visits the small village in Iceland in the winter.
He comes in the winter when the people are hungry. He brings fish.
And when the guard at the Central City prison reaches out to Bruce to let him know that Barry's visiting his dad, the guard's phone gives us a date of January 20th. We also know this movie takes place over a few months, since we can later see a clip of the K-pop song As If It's Your Last, which came out in June 2017, playing in Barry's loft, and Barry's acceptance letter to the CCPD at the end of the movie is dated sometime in August 2017. This movie finally features Bruce and Diana gathering up all their chosen metahumans, including Victor Stone, Arthur Curry, and Barry Allen, to help fight off Steppenwolf's second attempt at invading Earth. They're not all that good at it though, so they decide to resurrect Superman, who goes crazy for a bit before eventually helping the rest of the League during the final fight, with the team eventually successfully beating Steppenwolf and sending him and his parademons back to Apokolips. Sometime afterwards, we see the framing portion of Wonder Woman take place, with Diana being sent the original photo of her and her team from back in World War I by Bruce, prompting her to have a 2.5 hour long flashback. There's really nothing saying this part has to be in 2017, but I just like putting it here since it makes more sense to have Bruce reach out to Diana after the team up, but maybe that's just me. And finally, in 2018, we see both the main events of Aquaman and Shazam take place. Aquaman obviously takes place sometime after Justice League, since Mira mentioned that Arthur helped stop Steppenwolf.
He defeated Steppenwolf and saved Atlantis.
But it's never really specified exactly how long afterwards it takes place, so conservatively, I think we can put this about a year afterwards. This one features Arthur teaming up with Mira to stop Arthur's half-brother Orm in order to stop a war between Atlantis and the surface world. While Orm hires the pirate David Kane to help deal with his brother, Arthur and Mira follow a bunch of clues to track down the legendary King Atlan and his trident. Arthur eventually finds the trident, and after defeating Orm in combat, takes control of Atlantis, saving both it and the surface world in the process. Shazam, meanwhile, is actually really easy to figure out timeline-wise. See, while Billy and his foster brother Freddy are busy figuring out how Billy's powers work during a pretty fun montage, the two of them decide to start uploading all their different tests on YouTube, which, as we can see in this shot, puts a timestamp of early December 2018 on the videos. It also makes sense putting this one last in the timeline, since we also see a bunch of Justice League merchandise throughout the movie, and Freddy, being a superhero fan, is seen continually wearing a bunch of League shirts. It's a good thing he is a fan though, since he ends up helping Billy fully figure out his powers after he becomes the Wizard's champion, with Billy eventually sharing them with the rest of his family before they all fight off Dr. Sivana as he's empowered by the 7 deadly sins. Billy also ends up meeting Superman at some point apparently, and Dr. Sivana meets Mr. Mind while he's locked up, setting things up for a sequel. And that's it. That's pretty much the entire timeline of the DCEU as of right now. Like I said earlier, it's not too complicated, and given how I don't think some of the upcoming movies are going to upset the timeline all that much, it really shouldn't be that hard to work them into this whole thing, but we'll worry about that when those movies come out, I guess. Either way guys, that's my take on the DCEU timeline. If you guys agreed with anything I said in this video, or if you have your own thoughts you want to throw out there, then go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, then go ahead and click that like button, and if you're new, maybe consider clicking that subscribe button too. I've also got links to my Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and Patreon in the description. You should probably check those out too. And if you want to see more of my content, then you can click the link to my last video. It's right there in the middle of your screen. Alright, and I will see you all next time.